So, welcome,
Thank
Tess.
you.
It's really great to have you as the first guest on Mayne Talks TV.
Thank you very much.
Uh, so we wanted to get online and chat today about your exciting new collection that's launching in July, on the 13th of July here at Mayne Gallery. And what I wanted to really get into with you was mostly about what it is that inspires you and how your collectors can get to know you a little bit better, the person behind the work, let's say.
Okay, well, it was obviously a South Devon's exhibition, so I went down to Thelston, Bantham, Burr Island, and sort of just immersed myself in the landscape. And it's easy, it's beautiful down there. So you know, surrounded by inspiration. It wasn't hard to find anything that inspired me at all. And I am I am a landscape painter because if I can capture just that sense of you feel deeply invigorated, energized, humbled at the same time. It's if I can capture just a little bit of that. Quite often people come and they look at my paintings and they say, and they sigh and they go, and it's
Yeah.
like, and I say to them, and breathe. And I think if I, if I'm sort of capturing that and sort of people are resonating with that, then that's a fabulous thing. I want to share my work. I'm not self-indulgent with it. I want to enjoy the landscape, try and sort of represent it in a way that is evocative, but then also share that with other people. And I never get over the thrill of selling a painting. Never. I've been doing it for 20 years, and if I can connect with somebody and they can see what I'm doing, then it's great. And recently I've done a couple of commissions, and there was one lady who had lost her parents and had a very particular place that she used to walk with them, and I did a commission, and she was absolutely sort of bowled over by it. She was in tears, and I just thought, that's I'm doing something okay there, aren't I? Do you know what I mean?
It's so true. When people connect with a painting, it's not a logical decision.
No.
It's a heartfelt, body-led knowing, I feel. And I think with your work, what I find is there's this beautiful, tangible sense of space and peace.
Yeah.
And you can feel the wind. It's not that you're capturing it in a hyper realist way, but it's you're capturing that essence, that real sense of
Being in a
clarity,
place.
of the bigness of nature
Mm.
as well, which I
Yeah.
think is so
The expanse
so
is very key. Yeah. Yeah.
one of the questions I had here was what do you hope that your viewers will take away from experiencing your art? Is it an aesthetic or something emotional, something else? Is really quite linked to what we were just talking about there.
Well, I think it's an emotional thing. I think it's if it resonates with a memory, that's fantastic. Quite often people see my work, the moorland, and they say it reminds me of Scotland, and it may be Devon or Devon or Exmoor, and and I don't mind that, and that's quite often I deliberately don't sort of say it's a particular place because it's not. It's the sense of a place. As you say, it's feeling the wind, smelling the salt in the air, almost hearing the waves. It's deliberately evocative, more than just a visual thing. I don't want it just to be a visual representation. I want it to be, sort of resonance in sort of in your other senses somehow.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense.
If that,
It's
yeah,
art that's not just visual, but it's to be experienced viscerally.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and you talk about the sense of the space, and I think quite often I say I'm trying to paint what isn't there. Does that,
Mm.
if that makes sense? So there's obviously there's composition, there's color, there's mark, there's a view. But what I'm trying to paint is that space that's there in front, that kind of when you breathe in, when you're on the moor, and it's hugely sort of expansive and the great big sky, and all of a sudden you feel, it's sort of puts everything in perspective, and you feel kind of healed and invigorated. It's they're more, to me, they're more than just sort of pleasing, they're not the pleasing paintings. I know they're not challenging, they're easy to read, they're landscapes, they're not, do you know what I mean? But if I'm able to bring something more into it, then I guess I'm sort of achieving what I set out to do. I mean, it's interesting because I think I'm always struggling between, and not struggling, but sort of fascinated between that place between abstraction and realism, where it sort of resonates, and you're sort of thinking, if you look closely at my work, the mark doesn't make sense. It's not a petal or a leaf or a flower or even a cloud. It's a mark. But when you look at the whole, it's clearly a landscape. It's obviously a landscape. I'm interested, and it's almost sort of using the simplest mark to hold the most information. So that's a scrape of a, I don't know if I can find one, but still a bit wet. Can I use that? But just the cloud in the top there is just a scrape of a palette knife. And then I've just sort of, just blended it with my hand, but it looks like a cloud, but it wasn't painted as a cloud. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense.
So I'm experimenting with mark all the time. I think my color palette is mostly the same. It's a very cool color palette. I don't have a lot of control over that, and I don't think we do. I don't think we have control over our own aesthetic, which I find fascinating. People, when I'm at a show or something, people, and I think, well, if they're in blue and green linen, they'll probably like my work. I mean, and it's not always the case, but it's, we all have things that sit happily in our own eye. And I think, what I do is what I do. It doesn't mean I kind of really enjoy, your lovely still life artist, Amy, is it? I mean, they're beautiful, incredibly different. But what I'm saying is, my aesthetic is what I do, and it's
No, you're right there actually, because how you were saying it's almost like your expression of creativity, whether that comes through how you dress or how you present yourself, it's a part of your essence. And in many ways, when I see you, I see your work. And it's the same with Amy, for example. We were having this discussion with my colleague last week, because she's like, she looks like her work. She's soft, petite, and delicate and feminine, and it's just so lovely. It's like, so interesting. It's art is not just something that you do, it's something that you are.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think that's very true. Yeah, I think that's so true. And somebody asked me the other day why you were an artist, and I thought, well, it's a really, really difficult question to answer, because there are all sorts of reasons. I mean, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, so with incredible amount of freedom. Mum and dad were farmers. We didn't have any money. I remember having holy wellies and wellies that didn't fit, and and sort of, so it was, but what we had was freedom and space, and and I think that although your childhood doesn't define you, it seeps into you somehow. Do you know what I mean? So and I think, I mean, everyone's talking about sort of mindfulness, being in nature and things, but I suppose for me, it's kind of what I grew up with. So it's sort of it's not a difficult thing to think that that's good, feels good sort of thing. I don't mean to say that, I mean, it was, as everyone sort of has a different starting point, don't they? And I suppose it's funny because, well, I went to sixth form and I studied sciences, believe it or not, and I kind of rebelled against everything. I just sort of went off, and I've got 20-year-old children, and they're in this sort of place of, what do we do? And it's kind of like, doesn't matter what you do, just do something. Do you know what I mean? And find out what fits. And I trained as an art teacher, and then my head of art stepped down, so then my job became obsolete, and the school said, well, you can stay on and teach PSHE, and I was like, no, art is my passion. And then I got a job in a gallery, and that's how it all started. So do you know what I mean? It wasn't a plan, it just evolved. And I think life does that to you.
The unfolding of how
Mm. Yeah,
your life kind of just pans out, and not it's not always something that's a necessarily a really clear path. Sometimes
no.
it's just that's just how it unravels.
Yeah. But I mean, I've been painting since my eldest is 23 now, and yeah, so 24 years I've been painting, sort of thing, which is, I can't believe I've been painting that long, sort of thing. And it's interesting how my work's changed. I mean, when I started out, it was very large abstract work, sort of, but when I moved back to the West Country, you can't help but be inspired by the landscape. You can't help but be inspired by what's around you, So, yeah.
Amazing. That sort of leads me on to my next question, really, is about your creative process. So, would you be able to describe kind of not necessarily every single granular detail, but from more or less start to finish, your creative process of creating a collection or painting? And that would be really interesting to know.
Well, it's weird because I am, like you say, you're an artist. It's funny because it takes a while before you feel you can say that. Do you know what I mean? But I feel I've been doing it long enough. But I'm always looking, I'm sat here in my studio and I'm looking at the cloud and I'm looking at, so it's kind of continual. My creativity is continually being sort of touched or influenced by, places I go, things I see, and then I bring that back into the studio. If I'm absolutely honest, at the moment, I'm sort of reassessing things because I've been really, really busy. So I've been working, sort of producing a collection, off it goes, and I don't really have a lot of stock. And I think what I've got to do now is just take stock and think, well, do a collection and actually visit a place and then do a collection on that. And I think this is what I've decided I need to do. It's an interesting, being an artist is an interesting journey because you start off and of course you start selling your work and then you hopefully, and I've never approached a gallery. I've been fortunate and had galleries like you guys approach me, and then it's sort of actually keeping up with the amount of work. So I think I feel I need to have a little bit of time and sort of reassess where I am, really. I don't think that's answered your question. I've gone off on a complete
No,
tangent.
no,
But
but it's
but I think it's wide open space wherever I go. Any opportunity I'll get to the coast. I mean, hopefully one day I'll live by the sea, and then I feel it will feed my soul even more, sort of thing. But any opportunity, I go down to Devon, Cornwall, the Scillies. Yeah. So it feels where I need to be to move on with my work, if that makes sense. Yeah.
absolutely makes sense.
But I take a lot of photographs. I sketch, outside. It's mostly studio based. Just in terms of time, I would love to not have any time pressure. Time pressure is a good thing, but I'd love to just go and say I'm just going off for 6 months, but the reality of life and, being a mum, and that sounds awful, but there's so much to it. There's so much to it, having sort of fitting in everything else around, what you do. Yeah. I'm not at the position yet where I can just say, see you later, everybody. I'll be back in 6 months. I'm going to Antarctica. I'd love to go to Antarctica.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I'd love to paint wilder, the Mongolian desert. I mean, actually, funnily enough, when I first started painting, I used sort of, inspiration from when I traveled to way back in my 20s to Africa and things like that. And I'd love to, yeah, but it's not a bad place to live, the southwest of the UK, is it?
So fortunate to live here.
I
It's
know
incredibly
it is,
it's
and I think some of the beaches are the most beautiful in the world. I think, I mean, we don't have the weather, but even on a windy, wild day, it's just as invigorating. I
Yeah,
went to
absolutely.
Atlantic Bay the other day. Have you ever been there? Just around the corner from Foy.
Oh
Atlantic
yeah.
Bay. Oh, it was just on a beautiful sunny day and it was just gorgeous. So yeah, yeah.
So
Takes your breath
it
away.
was different colour to how it is here. It's almost a bit more turquoise and greeny.
Yes.
It feels a little bit more almost Caribbean
Yes, it
looking.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I will continually search for, yeah, beautiful landscapes and try and capture them in any way I can, really. So
And just one note to speak to what you were saying about space and time. I was having a really interesting conversation a couple of days ago about when you're so busy and you're in that constant hamster wheel of creation and
mhm.
you're acting and thinking at the same time. And it's so important to, as you said, to take space,
Yeah,
spend
yeah,
some time in order for that creativity to arise, because
yeah.
creativity in itself needs an opening. It needs rest. It
Space.
needs
Mm.
nothing in order for it to come
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
It's um, an interesting process, to say the
Oh,
least.
it is. It is. It's fascinating. And actually, strangely, I know that when I'm doing a collection, I get a little bit what's the word? Sort of inward thinking. So, I'll go back to the family and things, but I'm not very it's such a strange thing. It's a very internal thing. Do you know what I mean by that? I kind of think it's a bit like writing. I imagine it's a bit like writing a book. You get very kind of internalized,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah. And I get so when I get to the end of my sort of painting, and then I've got to get it ready and framed and sort of label it and whatever I need to do. I find that really invigorating because I feel really free of the kind of creative process. Do you know what I mean? Because I think, pardon, sorry, I
That
missed that.
sense of completion, like that,
Yes.
it's really kind of like, oh, satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's all done and off it goes. And it is an interesting process. I think it's sort of, you think it's kind of very it is, painting is very mindful. You get completely lost in it and sort of relaxing, but on the other hand it can be torturous, when you're trying to sort of like battle through with something. And then I mean, I have this thing, if I've done a painting and I know it's not sitting happily in my own eye, I'll wake up and think, I've got to do something with that painting, or that one's not right, or that one doesn't work with the collection. And so, do you know what I mean? It's yeah, yeah. It's strangely, it can be quite intense because I can be sat up, at my easel on my table, and 4 hours can go. And I'm thinking, where has that time gone? But it's yeah, I have no idea. But it's sort of just, when you get into that sort of, it's like a creative trance. You just keep going, and yeah, yeah.
In the flow when we would there's this lovely, well, definition, if you like, of flow. It's this it's literally just this flowing of moment to moment presence. And
Yeah,
when you're in the now, when you're in that pure unadulterated
yeah,
space of being here, it's
yeah,
just it's unending. It's in
yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, it's not
yeah.
really the of time.
No, yes, yeah, 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 yeah. And I think we've sort of, we're losing that, aren't we now? I mean, with,
Very easy to
with phones, and I don't know, I'm really trying to have a new relationship with my phone because I just think it takes so much time, and it's so and there's a real world to be living, isn't there? There's fresh air to be feeling and breeze, and I think yeah, I think it's important to sort of keep everything in balance, isn't it?
Yes. So I suppose that with your work as well, it's really inspiring people to immerse themselves in nature, to get
Yeah,
outside,
yeah,
to get the elements.
yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully, absolutely. And if it's there on the wall, well, hopefully it,
Brings it in.
yeah, brings it in. Maybe I don't know. So yeah,
I've got a couple more questions.
okay.
one of them was about any other artists or movements that have influenced you and your style or your approach to art, and whether or not or how you incorporate these kind of influences into your work. And that might not be applicable to you, but I just thought it was an interesting question.
Um, well, I mean, everyone talks about Kurt Jackson, and everyone sort of, they either love his work or hate his work. But I think he was quite revolutionary in the way he brought in that sort of random mark making to create an image, and I think he is incredibly clever in the way he uses, you look closely and it really is just splatters or, colors that are bled into each other, and still he captures the essence of the landscape. And I think that's what's interesting, so I think that's what yeah I don't know, I just think, if you can get a painting to resonate somehow. I mean, I always think that probably, if I think of the most influential painting I've ever seen, was a Rothko in the Tate. Huge, huge painting. Rothko, everyone knows Rothko's abstract. It was the sort of siennas and dark reds, but it literally was, the paint was moving on the canvas. It was resonating, it was zinging, it was kind of, and it was so absorbing. And I don't know, I saw it when I was about 16 or something. And I think that to me, is what inspires me, I suppose, is trying to get that, like we talked about before, trying to get more than just a visual representation. I mean, sort of work like that can be beautiful, but for me it's like, I want to get more in it. I want to sort of, yeah,
It's a
be
full body.
evocative. I want it to be emotional. I want it. I mean, there are, the art world is fascinating, isn't it? Because there are pieces of work that are, either like a statement piece, or, I mean, now, with the younger generation, it's interesting with all the kind of, the graffiti and the Banksies and the Harry Bunts, and, it's all very kind of, almost cartoony and illustrative and bold and colourful, which is fantastic, and but it's not, it's sort of different from the kind of thing I'm trying to do, which is emotive. I'm trying to create something that's sort of, ooh,
It's a sigh rather than an activation of
yeah,
energy. Almost, I feel that with a lot of the urban graffiti art and pop art style work, it's very activating, and it's also, there's quite a lot of commentary on
yeah,
the situation, politics, and
absolutely,
should, but it's almost reflective of society and of that generation.
yeah,
Everything is
yeah,
very with
yes,
things, with climate change, with politics,
yeah,
with society in general,
yeah, it's
war.
true,
It's all very, oh,
yeah,
this is how it makes me feel, and also that's kind of how that artwork makes me feel. And oftentimes, for my own personal experience, I want something that's going to make me feel calm and
yeah.
peace. And
And do you know what? I mean, that all of that is true,
mm,
but the landscape, is still there, isn't it?
it's always
So,
there.
and it's easy, isn't it? It's like, I think, as human beings, we focus on the negative, and we've got to remember that there's still, I know things are really, really tough, and there's all sorts of, or, but you've got to hold on to, nature is still there, isn't it? And whatever the human beings will do, nature will win anyway. Do you know what I mean? I know, we've got to protect the planet, but if the big guys won't do it, it'll win through somehow. Do you know what I mean? Just the way the ivy grows and the, things come up through the pavement, so
It's also really important is to remember that those things are still there. And when we recognize and place our awareness into these integral foundational parts of being nature, we are nature, we are human
we are
nature.
nature, absolutely.
It's just remembering
We
that
forget that.
and remembering the good things that are there to fight for.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So use that as a means to empower us, rather than to get sort of bogged down in the sort of, desperate situations that really, really, really are out there. But there are other places. And actually it's sort of, we hear so much negativity on the media and everything about all the horrendous things that are going on. But most people are good.
Yes.
Most people do care about each other and things, and we forget that, and we've got to hold on to that, because otherwise that really will go.
I think that the really, one of the really important things that I really love to remind myself is that intrinsically, I honestly wholeheartedly believe that all humans at their core are good, and we
Yes.
just have all of these layers of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's that peeling back of those layers. And
Absolutely.
you look at nature, when you immerse yourself in nature, that is our most natural state of being.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Bit of a tangent there.
I know. Good. Um, Final question really was just if there's anything else that you'd like to share with gallery visitors or collectors of your work, anything in particular that you really want them to know.
Um, I don't know really. I think if people like my work, engage with it, well, that's great. And as I said before, it's not challenging. I'm not trying to, sort of create well, I am actually. I am sort of creating a message, just saying that, get out there in the nature and feel better. Do you know what I mean? It is, yeah, it's what we need to do. And I completely agree with you saying that we are nature, and I've been saying that for a while now, but we forget that, and we've got to reconnect with it. It's really important. I just think, yeah, sort of technology is great to a point. It's a tool. It enables us, but we don't. We have to be careful not to lose sight that we're, yeah, part of nature, as you say.
Absolutely. That was so enjoyable. Thank you so much for that
No,
chat.
pleasure. Really nice to see you.
It's really great. And hopefully, well, I'll see you soon.
Well,
And
yeah, yeah,
wait,
definitely.
these new pictures. It's going to be an amazing collection. And we've got a collection of how many in total? Remind me.
Um, I think it's 18.
I
I've
thought it was,
I've
I
I've
didn't
I've
just
done a few. I've done a couple of sort of landscape longer ones as well. I think it's 18. It just depends when I get them together, and I think, yeah, I'm keeping going. I've got a couple of big pieces to do, and those are the ones that I sort of agonize over a bit more, because I always want to go more abstract, and then and it's, yeah. Yeah, so we'll see what comes out. I've no idea when I start painting what it's going to look like.
well, thank you so much. I'll
My
stop
pleasure.
there and
Okay.
say thank you very much.